Hello and welcome to Business Spotlight, where today we are joined by Paul Davis, co-founder of Nimbus. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, Anna. Very well, keep very well. Very well. How are you doing?
Excellent. I'm really good, thank you. Thank you so much for asking. I like to dive straight in, Paul. So I'm going to hit you with the first question. Tell us what you do and how long you've been doing it for, please.
Yeah, so we're Nimbus. So we are a sort of an online web platform ultimately that kind of helps typically investors, developers, and property professionals to sort of find opportunities and find ways of typically kind of make money out, I suppose, out of property basically. And we sort of offer a sort of suite of tools that you can find opportunities, you can check whether they work from a financial and planning viability kind of point of view, and a suite of tools to kind of connect with kind of key people that are going to make those things work basically. So that's typically what we do here at Nimbus with our products here.
Fabulous. And how long have you been doing that for?
Well, sort of the true answer for about 11 years actually. But we sold our first license 8 years ago. But sort of the early sort of ideas and things were sort of starting to form kind of 11 years ago, doing the odd bit of bits and pieces for sort of various clients and stuff back then really. So it's kind of 11 years of I suppose thought and work and effort, if that makes sense.
Evolution and problem solving by the sounds of it. So it sounds like as there's been an issue brought to the table, you've created or added to your suite of tools by the sounds of it.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. It's been sort of scratching our own itch really, sort of our own problems that we've been trying to resolve, and that's then given birth to Nimbus to try and help others with the same problems really.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What motivated you to start the business 11 years ago?
Well, that's a good question, really. It evolved, really. So we sort of started life as investor developers. So we were sort of buying property assets and trying to reposition them and sort of tweak them and change them and trying to make some better returns out of them ultimately. And we then sort of stumbled across a different problem, which was we got an opportunity on one of our sites where we couldn't make it work, and ended up joint venturing a site sort of neighbouring one of our properties with big pub companies. So it was kind of one of the big nationals, and sort of cut a long story short, that went very well, and they sort of wanted to do a bit more, as we ended up doing quite a lot of stuff for them and with others as well. And the kind of typical problem that we had was trying to understand how you apply local knowledge on a very big portfolio of sort of small fiddly assets basically. And so we sort of fell into it really. This was a sort of problem we were trying to resolve. And then we had various other clients. So sort of back in the day, sort of if you cast your mind back to kind of credit crunch time and sort of smoking bans in sort of 2008 and this sort of stuff, where the world was very different, sort of a bit like now really, kind of pre-COVID and post-COVID, sort of different world, it feels like it.
Yeah.
It was sort of the same back then really. And we had this very strange time where we were trying to get, it was actually Co-op, we were trying to get Co-op to take some sites from one of our other clients, Punch Taverns. And they were like, well, these kind of properties are kind of interesting, but we've got this sort of piece of software. And they're like, what's this software you've got? And like, we're like, well, it's this thing we've made to kind of to do this, to sort of find these properties for you. And they're like, well, can we use it? And we were like, well, no, you can't. No, it's ours. It's kind of what makes us kind of unique. Like, well, you're going to use us rather than one of the big agency firms, you know. And eventually we kind of realized that was a mistake, and that actually we kind of need to support our clients rather than sort of keep all our stuff as our own USP, and that if we didn't do it, somebody else would. And hence we decided to sell them some licenses, and we sold them some, and then our other clients, well, can we have it too? And so we sold them some as well, and sort of very quickly realized that it was a very interesting proposition that we'd got, and hence we ought to kind of focus a bit more on that. And at the time we had multiple businesses running at the same time, and what we tended to find was that rather than being able to prioritize your time on the stuff you want to work on and where the real opportunity is, we were focusing on the parts of the businesses that were struggling or had problems. And so your focus was in the wrong place. You were kind of always trying to fix problems in areas where the business was less exciting than the one that you were after. So we sort of decided to get rid of the other stuff and just focus on Nimbus, because that was the one that was kind of super exciting really, and had the opportunity really. So hence it was kind of evolution really.
Yeah. What made you flip focus? So what was it that kind of created that switch to because that's quite difficult for business owners to split focus on and let go of things.
Yeah.
Especially things that aren't working well, because like we want to make it better.
Yeah. Well, I think this. So for us, it was scalability. and it was kind of ease of scalability, and it was where the opportunity clearly sat, and it was also kind of taking a long, hard, sort of deep look at yourself and saying, well, what are you truly good at? And our ability to do a deal on a piece of property is no better than anybody else's. We know how to do it, and so do a lot of other people, and we can all kind of make these things work. Whereas what was quite unique about us was we were kind of using data and technology to sort of unearth this sort of stuff, and there were very few people to be able to do that, and very few people doing it as well as we were, and hence you should really focus on where you really are kind of unique, and there really is an opportunity, and hence we sort of took that decision. And it wasn't an easy one, to be fair. It was kind of, I ran the company with my brother, and it was very difficult to just forget about businesses and forget about things that you worked hard to build up, in light of the new shiny thing. It's kind of always a delicate balance, that really. So but we did it, and we're very pleased we did it, to be honest. It's I think a very interesting, I think it's a very good decision we made.
No, it sounds it. Has it been everything that you hoped it would be?
I don't know that we had huge hopes and plans and dreams for it when we sort of set it up. It was more of an evolution and a clear opportunity that we could deliver against, and that we should deliver against, and that our customers want us to deliver against. And so I think that question works very well when it's sort of your first business. You sort of you've left corporate life and gone and done this. I suppose we were, and probably still are, sort of battle-scarred entrepreneurs, I suppose, sort of working your way through various businesses and things. And so I think we didn't go in with rose-tinted spectacles of what life might be as an entrepreneur. We sort of knew that it was going to come with hard graft, and we've had hard graft along the way, as every business does. It's interesting that the hard graft is different, and the problems are different depending on the business, but there's still problems. Business is booming, there's problems. If there's business is struggling, then there's problems, and they're both problems. They're different problems, but they're both problems. And so I think it has been everything we hoped it would. I think it kind of has in many ways, but there's always things to resolve, and always frustrations. You're not where you want to be, and there's kind of you have your own targets and stuff, and you set them high, because if you set a big target and you don't quite hit it, you've still achieved quite a lot. And so hence that comes with frustration. So there's always frustration, but I think that's just business, really, isn't it?
So everything you hoped for, taking those battle scars and using those as a rocket booster to reach those targets, those big targets that you've set yourself. Have you got hopes and dreams? So if you didn't come into this with hopes and dreams as such, have you, as well as your targets and goals, have you got sort of hopes and dreams for 5 years? Have you got any long-term plans?
Yeah, so I think so I suppose the hopes and dreams that we did have, so perhaps it's not fair to say there weren't any, but the hopes and dreams we did have were around what might be possible, and kind of whether it might be possible to do the things that we are now doing. So some of the analysis, some of the things that we can unearth now, which were historically very hard to find, we now have complete databases across the whole of the UK, and those sort of gems and nuggets that we sort of had to dig out, was so hard to dig out historically, now we've got them on a spreadsheet, and we can recreate it, and we can send alerts based on when they happen. There's all that kind of stuff that you can now do that you couldn't then. I think there's still a long ways to go. There's still a lot more we can do, and I think those are the hopes and dreams that I've got, is getting to those places where these things that were so difficult historically now are trivial and sort of run of the mill. I think that's where my kind of hopes and dreams are. I think around the new things you can deliver, the new things you can find out, the new ways in which all this kind of happens. Really, that's kind of where I think my hopes and dreams are, and I think they're all very deliverable. So it's perhaps not even hope and dream; it's just kind of a roadmap. Maybe I don't know, but
yeah, maybe they need to be as big as your targets, because it sounds like your targets are quite big and hairy. So maybe we need to have a look bigger picture. But you've gone into a little bit of detail there with what you do within the industry. But what makes you really stand out in the industry?
I think it's the approach, really. So it's kind of, I think, two things. I suppose for me, so one is that we care about our customer. I think that's one of the things. And I think that because we kind of come from the industry that we're in, we sort of understand how difficult some of the bits of it are, and how some of it's not really very fair, and we can kind of help kind of adjust the balance of that, really. I think that's that's quite unique, I think, when it comes to sort of the kind of stuff that we do. So selling technology typically is technology companies and this sort of stuff that don't necessarily empathize with the customer. They just sell products that resolve problems for the customer. Whereas we kind of really understand that. So I think that's kind of sort of having the customer first is kind of a big thing, because we kind of care about them. And I think then our approach to the way in which we solve these problems, and the way in which we sort of start with the customer when we're trying to resolve the problems that we're trying to resolve. Okay. Maybe that's not crazy unique. Maybe that's just sort of good business running. I don't know, but it's pretty unique in terms of the marketplace that we're in. I think is kind of really caring about the customer and caring less about the VC that's behind you. So I think that perhaps is a bit unique, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you attribute your growth to, Paul?
Well, probably that, really, in terms of sort of caring about the customer, trying to create a product that does the stuff that the customer wants, sort of knowing what you can create and how that helps the customer, and being very clear about that for them. And then selling it at a price that's fair and that's not ridiculous, really. And that perhaps is sort of, pricing can be such a big thing when it comes to sort of business growth and business revenue. Sort of the single biggest thing you can do, I think, is kind of typically is change pricing. But I think there's an element of fairness around that. And if you get that fairness, and you treat your customer well, and you care about your customer, and you do stuff that kind of truly delights them, then often it's quite easy to sell more, and that really drives growth. And if you've got revenue growth, you can bring more staff in, and you can look after those staff in the same way, and the business grows, obviously. So I think that's really kind of where it's come from, I think.
Yeah. What do you think influences your put my teeth back in, your evolution more? Is it the problems that the clients bring to the table, or is it something that you need to do internally around sort of innovation and keeping things moving, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think your customers tell you what they need and what they want, and sort of they tell you what they know they want. The problem is they don't know what they don't know. And so often you have to kind of know that yourself, and you have to know, what it is they kind of, because you understand what their problems are and you know what you can deliver, you sort of know how those two things align. That's quite a hard thing, I think, because you're trying to balance, well, the customers ask for this, so do we build that? But we know over here they've got this problem, and this other thing over here will fix that. And so which of those two do you choose? And that can be quite a problem, really. You sort of have to sort of tell about stuff they could have, and then get them excited about that, and sort of ask them, well, which one would you rather have? Well, I know I've got this problem, but if you've got the other one, then maybe you've got this problem as well. And sort of trying to get them to kind of to score those can be quite difficult, really. But so a bit of both is the thing. What we've tried to do in the past is try to break that cycle, and try to get customers that get so excited about the new things we want to go and build, that then they'll kind of commit to that, and they'll sort of forward buy it, or they'll do something to sort of show their commitment to what we're trying to do. And that's then helped us kind of balance those two things.
Right.
People, if you come forward with an idea and go, "Isn't this a great idea?" They'll go, most people are kind of polite and go, "Yes, that's a great idea." Do you want to buy it? No, but it sounds like great, And so if you can kind of break that bit, then we found that can be quite a good sort of a good thing, really.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you keep yourself really, really busy. So how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
Well, it's a good question, really. It's quite hard, is the answer. I think so. I've got two small children, and so sort of we try to protect the weekends. So we try to protect, try not to work at the weekends if we can. Try to get home for bedtime if I can. That doesn't always kind of happen. But it's trying to protect those sort of hours in the evening, so you get a bit of a chance to see them. Perhaps some of the early mornings as well, when they get up. I'm usually up quite early as well, so sort of try to see the kids at that point as well. But then you sort of try to shoehorn work in at other strange times of the day, aren't you, really? So I think it's not an easy thing to do, actually. And I think that the more mature the business becomes, the less that pressure comes, really. If you can get your staffing structure right, then there shouldn't be huge amounts of pressure on you, but it's not always easy to do, and there's always kind of issues around staffing structure and stuff, isn't there, and sort of people issues and stuff, and so it doesn't always kind of play out. So often there's more pressure at certain times than at other times, and so it's a constant battle, I think, is the answer.
It's one of the most difficult questions that business owners are finding the answer to within Business Spotlight lately. I've had a different answer each time. Now, what was really interesting there is you used what we would consider a swear word in the action coach world, which is the word try. So I know that when you say that you try not to work at weekends and you try and get home for bedtime, that probably means that 60% of the time that's not achieved. So I can imagine that you work quite a few weekends. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm not quite as bad as that, actually. Sort of when I say try, I sort of attempt to achieve it, to be honest. It's not it's not a sort of a 60% of the time. Sort of, I don't work many weekends if I can help it. There is the odd webinar or something you kind of invite to at the weekends, just certain parts of our marketplace are sort of busy at weekends and evenings and stuff. So you do sort of drift into some of that sort of stuff. But and the other bit that kind of helps sort of balance it is I think is sport, actually. Personally, sort of carving out time for exercise is quite an important thing. I think that kind of helps. Often, the work-life balance being out of kilter, either the family suffer or work suffers, or you suffer yourself because you're trying to squeeze too much in. I sort of tend to find that exercise is quite a good thing for that, is that kind of releases all of that, and you sort of, whilst lots of pressure on you, you get a bit of headspace as a result of it, really. So so maybe that also helps. I don't know. Yeah,
it's important. What's your sport of choice?
Well, running typically, or kite. If we get kite surfing is great, but that's sort of quite a rare thing, really. So
wow. Hey, if there's somewhere to kite surf in Warwickshire, please share.
Not so much.
Oh, damn it. Oh no, thank you so much for sharing. What would you say has been your biggest learning over the years, Paul?
What's the biggest learning we've had? I think questioning stuff is really useful. I think sort of challenging, I suppose, proving the things that you think are right, sort of not necessarily relying on what you think is right, but you can have your own opinions around things, but those should be supported by data, and there should be a way of quantifying what it is you think. I think that's quite important. I think focus is very important as well. I think kind of it's very easy to say yes to stuff, and it's very hard to say no to things. If you say yes to everything, then sort of at a certain level you can kind of get away with that. But if the business is successful, then you hit a point where you can't say yes to everything. Yeah. And so sort of being prepared to say no to stuff is really important, I think. And sort of trying to maintain that focus. It's not always easy to do, but it's kind of, I think that's one of the big learnings is not saying yes to everything, and being prepared to say, I think also being prepared to say that it's not a priority at the moment, and it may come back later, but I think that's been quite a big thing for us, really.
Yeah. Would you say that that's one of your company values?
I would hope so. Yeah, I would hope so. It's not always easy when you've got people like myself and brother that want to do all the stuff they want to do. It's kind of quite hard to say no to all that stuff, but there's only so much you can do. And I think that we certainly encourage our teams to sort of push back and say, we can do 3 out of 5 things you're asking us to do. Which 3 do you want? And sort of picking those is we're pretty good at that. Kind of when that comes back, we're pretty good at choosing which ones we want, rather than all 5 and knowing that 4 and 5 will come later if they're still a priority when 1, 2, and 3 have been dealt with. So yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah.
I've got one more question just around sort of your biggest learning. What's it like working with your brother?
Good question. I think brothers say things to each other that you wouldn't say to a normal employee, I think. So it's a different dynamic from working with other people, I think. Mm-hmm. But because you're brothers, you can get away with it, because you've said those same things to each other since you were kids, and so it's sort of no different in your 40s as it is in your teens, really. So it's a bit different, but it's not an awful lot different, frankly. And so yeah, no, absolutely. We get on very well, and we work very hard as a part of that. We both have similar attitude to these things. We're both very similar but very different in many ways, and so that is kind of quite helpful in many ways, because it can create friction when you need friction, and you can very quickly align when you need to. So it's kind of quite helpful. I think if everyone just violently agrees with each other, you just all go on the same path, and you don't necessarily kind of think about the stuff around it. So yeah, no, it works well for us. We've been doing it for 20 years now. So must be kind of somewhere along going all right, I guess. So
something's working. Something's working. That's for sure. Which
yeah.
leads me to my final question. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And do you have any words of advice for other business owners who are looking to grow?
So 5 years time, what I'm hoping in 5 years time is that we've delivered on the stuff that we want to deliver on. So I'm hoping that those things at the moment that we think we can deliver and we think we can do, and that sort of feel like a roadmap. And I'd like to see us there. I'd like to see these things happening. And I think those really kind of change our industry in terms of the way they're currently being done. And that really kind of opens up a lot of opportunity for the people in the industry to do lots of bigger and more exciting things than perhaps they're kind of held back with at the moment. So I'm kind of hoping in 5 years time we've delivered against that roadmap, and we're then on to other things that's probably very close to what we're currently doing, but sort of the next challenge I'm sure will be there really. What advice have I got for other business owners? I think the bit that always intrigues me is that for every business, you always think your problems are your own, and that nobody else can possibly have those same problems. What I found across all the stuff that we've done is that the problems that you've got, everybody else has got them as well, or there's certainly a lot of other people that have those same problems. So whilst you feel at the time like it's only you that have got these problems, it's very common and everyone's got them. And to kind of, I find that quite relaxing and quite a helpful thing to know it's not just me, it's not just us, it's not just our kind of circumstances, it's just a thing. And we've sort of seen that through the various stages of growth we've been through, of the, you're reading this thing over here and it's like, gosh, that's explaining exactly where I'm currently at. And it's just a thing. It's just what business is like, really. So I think that would my advice is to not panic and to know that it's normal, and regardless of what those issues are, it's normal, and to keep plugging away at it. I think there's always a kind of difficult problem of if things aren't going well and continue not to go well and you can't pivot your way out of them. It's kind of knowing when you put something down and stop it, and sort of not being scared of pivoting out of things and sort of doing different things if the things you're doing aren't working. But I think that's perhaps two bits of advice, I don't know, but that's kind of, I think, where my mind's at.
I think two brilliant pieces of advice. Is there anywhere that you go to put yourself in the right space to learn from other business owners? So, if understanding that your problems are shared and they are normal, as you said, was there anywhere that you particularly went that exposed you to those like minds?
So in the early days, we had coaches and mentors. Sort of more latterly, we've got sort of a bigger board, and we've got some non-exec support that kind of we find helpful. So they obviously can get exposed to a lot of other businesses. It's quite easy to get exposure to other businesses if you just talk to them, and they can be in sort of adjacent sectors, or often actually perhaps not direct competitors, but kind of people that are quite closely linked to the marketplace that you're in. And typically, if you open up and speak to them kind of openly about stuff, then they'll go, "Oh, it's funny you said that, because that's exactly what I'm going to go to at the moment." So not formally, but the sort of formal stuff is through the board and through that sort of stuff, and investors and things like that have other exposures to other businesses and their own business and this sort of stuff. We sort of tend to find if you kind of share what you're going through with them, then you often get some very interesting sort of insights into that, really. So that's typically where we've gone historically. Sort of in the early days, so we sort of had sort of coaches and mentors that kind of helped with bits of that, and that's kind of migrated more into sort of the formality of a board and non-execs and stuff to help us with that, really. So.
But if in doubt, pick up the phone. Business owners are not that scary, apparently.
Absolutely, absolutely. Every business owner loves to talk about their own business, and so like today, it's like I sat and talked for half an hour on business QED, and so it's just about kind of asking them, and it's about sort of hearing what they've got to say, and they'll sit and talk to you for sort of and tell you what they're going through. And I often find that business owners are also kind of quite interested in your business problem and are prepared to kind of offer advice, and sort of very happy to do that, because they sort of enjoy the intellectual challenge of it, the sort of well, I've had that problem over here and the way I've dealt with it here, so everyone's kind of keen to talk about your problems, their own problems. Everyone's kind of happy. It's all kind of interesting for people, I think. So
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. I think that's the best bit of advice to end on. So I just want to say a massive thank you for joining me today on Business Spotlight. And I hope I get to see you kite surfing around Warwickshire sometime soon. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Alan.